Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. You know the routine. Please drop your name and where you're zooming in from in the chat so that we can say hello. We're so glad that you joined us today. We've got Genevieve from Santa Rosa, California, Caroline from New York City. Hey, Kelly from Chicago, and we have Linda from Bellevue, Washington. Deborah from Albuquerque, Nikki from Portland. Hey, y'all. Maria from Arlington, Virginia. Hey, homegirl, I'm from Hampton Roads, Virginia. And aren't we proud Virginians right now? We did it, didn't we? We all did it. Wherever we were voting, we did it. Washington, D.C., we've got Anita Bluffton from South Carolina. Now, y'all know I was just waiting for the opportunity to brag about being from Virginia. Anyway. Again, welcome everyone. This month we are excited to host a session on protecting immigrant rights and building collective power. This training is part of the Solidarity in Action Training for Systemic Change and Allyship speaker series, and we are so glad that you've joined us today. In this session, we'll learn how to show up as allies for immigrant communities who are facing law enforcement encounters. We'll learn our rights as bystanders, immigrant rights during those interactions, and practical strategies to act safely and effectively. Together, we will strengthen our collective ability to protect one another and build the solidarity our communities need to thrive. Next slide. As usual, got a little bit of housekeeping. This call, I'm going to go on and the slides will catch up for once I'm not behind. I'm normally the one catching up. This call is being recorded and will be uploaded to our Solidarity in Action YouTube playlist. You can find us on the Indivisible official YouTube channel. If you like and follow, you'll get notified whenever we upload videos from the speaker series. Q&A. We have enabled the Q&A section, so please use the Q&A only for questions that are related to tonight's session. We have a lot of people on the call, and we are going to be unable to respond to questions in the Q&A or the chat about anything other than tonight's presentation. Also, if you see a question that's been asked that you would also like to have the answer to, just go on and give it a thumbs up and upvote that question, and we'll be able to get to some of the most frequently asked questions. Now, if you have other questions, not about the session, we're going to ask you to email us at c3programs@indivisible.org. That's c3programs@indivisible.org. So let's go over, next slide. We'll just go over a brief agenda. We've hopefully made you feel welcome. We have let you, just want to give some updates about the Solidarity in Action series. We have added a new session to the series. Many of you have asked for a Saturday session, so we'll tell you about that session and include that information in the follow-up email that you'll get in about 48 hours. We have a special guest tonight that I want to introduce you to. Maribel Hernandez Rivera is the National Director of, if we can take the slides down and spotlight Maribel. There we go. I'll start again. Maribel Hernandez Rivera is the National Director of Immigrant Community Strategies at the American Civil Liberties Union. She was previously the Director of Policy and Government Affairs for Border and Immigration at the ACLU, and before that served as the organization's Deputy National Political Director and Equality Division Director. Maribel's professional and lived experience has centered around advocating for immigrant rights. She previously served as the District Director for Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, where she established and oversaw all day-to-day operations of two district offices. Welcome so much, Maribel. I hope you can see all of the love that you're already getting in the chat. And we are so excited and looking forward to learning from you today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kimberly, and thank you, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. I have to tell you, we've been working with Indivisible as the ACLU on the No Kings rallies and many other efforts to really protect our democracy. And it's really a privilege for me to be in this community with you all because I know you all care. I know you want to be there for each other. You want to be there for people who are vulnerable. And I thank you. So, just a little bit about myself, in addition to what Kimberly mentioned, is that I myself am an immigrant. I came from Mexico when I was 13, and I came not speaking any English. I came and I was here undocumented for a few years, so I know what it's like to feel that you could be deported anytime. I know what it's like to feel alone. And I have to tell you that when I was a teenager, worrying that I might be deported, I didn't know that there were so many people who cared. But now I know. And I know that you who are watching me out there, I know you care and I thank you for that because that has made a big difference in my life. And I know it makes a big difference even in this moment where we're seeing a lot of violations, in this moment when our immigrant communities are being terrorized. I want to thank you for being here. And so now I'm going to share my presentation. And today we are here to speak to you about our rights, knowing our rights. And one question that I often get is, well, we're seeing our rights being violated. Why should we know this? Why is it important to know our rights? And I will say a few things. One, we are seeing how knowing our rights can sometimes prevent violations. It does sometimes work. And in fact, we have seen this administration be upset that people know their rights, right? Because it works. So it does work sometimes. Also, when it doesn't work, even when our rights are violated, then we know what we should be documenting so that eventually if we go to court, we have that information there. So that's important. And number three, knowing our rights also allows each individual to make a risk assessment and decide, is this the moment I'm going to exercise my rights or is this the moment that I'm going to choose to do something else? So that is why it's important to know our rights. And I shall tell you that when we talk about know your rights, I'm sharing with you information that is accessible on our website and many other places. This is not a legal consultation. So for one-on-one legal advice, you should consult with an attorney. Now I'm going to go to the next slide. Okay, so I will talk about our rights, but I want you to pay attention because we will be testing your knowledge. So pay attention so that you can, when we get to our role play, you can help us figure out what went well, what we could do better. And we're going to save some time for Q&A because I know you all have questions. And so we want to make sure that we get to your questions. All right. So number one, uh, it might not feel like it, but we all have constitutional rights. The Constitution protects everybody, whether we're immigrant or not, documented or undocumented. Now, there's some people who might want us to believe that that's not the case. And I know actually when I speak to people one-on-one, some people are surprised to hear that the Constitution protects all of us. But that's important for all of us to know. Some of the freedoms, there's various freedoms in the Constitution that are protected, but some of the ones that are relevant to tonight's session is the freedom of speech. We're all protected. We can say what we want. The rightful to peaceful assembly, talk about protesting, etc. Also, the right to not be detained or arrested without a valid reason. That's really important. Now, you see there a valid reason. Now, this is important because we don't want to give them a reason. So that's why it's important for us to know our rights because then we know how we should interact or how we can or cannot interact. Also, we have the right to refuse consent to searches of our body, of our home, and of our belongings. So we can refuse consent. Now, if law enforcement has a valid reason to search, they will search. And that you leave up to them. But if you believe that, if you don't want to give consent, say it out loud. Say, I do not give consent to this search. And the right to remain silent. This one is really important because basically we have seen it on TV. Anything that we say, anything that we do will be used against us, right? And so the best thing is to not say anything, because once we start talking, we say one thing, then we say the other, then it's harder to stop. But you can always stop. So remind to remain silent is really, really important. And now, if we are detained or we are arrested, we have the right to ask for a lawyer. Now, it's important to note that if we're criminally charged, the government must provide us with a lawyer. But if we are charged, say, for example, with an immigration violation, they don't have to provide us with a lawyer, but they have to give us the ability to be able to contact a lawyer if we are able to get a lawyer. So let's talk about interacting with law enforcement. And I say law enforcement generally because what we're seeing in many cities now, we're seeing the police, we're seeing in some places the National Guard, in other places we're seeing other federal agencies. What I want you to know is that no matter what uniform they're wearing, they too are bound by the Constitution. The Constitution protects us from all of them. And so all the rights that I mentioned above, all of them apply regardless of which law enforcement agency we're dealing with. Now, and here's where we know our rights, and then we also need to be thinking about how we are deciding to interact with law enforcement. So for us, it is top priority that we keep ourselves safe and that we de-escalate. That's just really important for each individual's safety. We don't want you to be in danger. So always keeping that in mind. And so keeping that in mind, one of the advice that we have is remaining calm. Because if you make any sudden move, that could be used as a pretext. And they could say, well, Maribel was moving, all very excitedly. And so I thought she was about to do something against me. And so they could use that against me as a valid reason to do something, detain, arrest me, etc. So remain calm. Never physically resist or obstruct. Now, this is important. Sometimes we might feel that what they're doing is violating our rights, and they might very well be doing so. But if we resist or obstruct, we put ourselves more in peril. So, again, with the purpose of keeping yourself safe and de escalating, not resisting and not obstructing is the way to go. Keeping our hands visible is important because, say, for example, if I put my hands in my pocket, they could say, well, Maribel put her hands in her pocket and I thought she was going to take out an arm, right? Again, we're giving them a reason that they could use against us. So again, the more we can give them no reason, the better. And now, if we are questioned, because we could be on the street and you can have a law enforcement, we're minding our business, we're on the street, they can ask questions just like we can ask questions of anybody, right? If you're questioned or you stopped, first thing you can ask is, am I free to go? Because if they don't have a valid reason, they can't stop you. They can't detain you. And they cannot arrest you. And so the first question is, am I free to go? If they say yes, you are free to go, then walk away again calmly so that you give them no reason to escalate the situation. Now, important. I'm often asked, what kind of documentation should I carry? Can I wear a mask? So what I want you to know is that in some states, you must provide your name to law enforcement. And if you're asked to identify yourself as part of a lawful stop, you must do so. I'm going to put in the chat a link because, again, it depends on the states. I'm going to put in the chat the link to a resource that will allow you to figure out in your state what are the requirements of identifying yourself. So that's one thing you need to know. Another thing, people who look like me, who speak like me, who even dress like me, might be more targeted than other people, right? Because of the situation that we're in. So even though I'm a US citizen, and as a US citizen, I am not required to carry proof of citizenship inside the United States. Some people are choosing to carry such proof just in case something happens. Again, that is a choice, not a legal requirement. Another thing that people can do is they can keep their documentation that proves that they're a citizen in a place where their emergency contact can access it if needed. So again, this is why knowing our rights is important because it allows us to both know the legal requirement and also make the decision that is best for us. Now, adult immigrants with a green card or a visa, they are required to carry their documentation. So they're required to carry that green card or their visa. And if an immigration officer asks for it, they have to show it. So that is different from US citizens. And so again, as we know our rights, it is important to know our own circumstances because that might determine how we behave. And in some places, if you go to say for a demonstration, you might not be able to wear a mask, or there's some masking laws in some jurisdictions. So you should know what those jurisdictions and what's happening in your jurisdiction. So the next slide is a very important one. When we talk about our rights, our constitutional rights, there is a marked difference between public spaces versus private spaces. Because in private spaces, you have a, you know, you have your own privacy, right? And so if you all can put in the chat, what are public spaces, what are private spaces, um, please let me know so we can engage. But for example, if you are lawfully present in a public space, so you're lawfully present in a park, you have the right to photograph, to live stream, to film, or to record what's happening in plain view, so long as you're not obstructing or interfering. So again, I mentioned this before, not obstructing, not interfering, but you have the legal right to be able to photograph, live stream, or film in public spaces when you're there lawfully. Now, and I see public spaces, sidewalks, public spaces, streets. Thank you. I see now. Let's go to private spaces. I see private spaces, your home, right? Like that's one of the most private spaces, and you have this idea like this is my space, and nobody can come in unless I let them in or unless they have a warrant. So this is really important. Even if they come knocking at my door and they say, I'm an officer of the law, let me in, they cannot come in unless they have a warrant. Now, I see in the chat that some other places that are being mentioned in terms of private spaces, a workspace, for example, can be a private space, and it can be mixed, right? There might be the lobby that might be open to the public, but there might be the office that is closed and it's just private. So in areas where they're mixed use, it would be very important for people to denote what the public spaces are and the private spaces to make it very clear that in the private spaces you have that expectation of privacy. So this is really important. Again, public versus private spaces. And similarly, I mentioned that if you're lawfully present in a public space, you can film, you can record. But if you're in a private space, it is the owner of that private space who can decide what you can or cannot do when it comes to photographing, live streaming, etc. So that's why the distinction between public versus private spaces is very important. All right, the next one. I talked to you about warrants. And I said an officer of the law can only come into your private space if they have a warrant. But it's not just any kind of warrant. It's a judicial warrant. And this is important because, and I'm sharing with you here the two types of warrants, because on the one side where you see United States District Court, that is a judicial warrant. Why is that a judicial warrant? Because it was issued by a district court, it was signed by a judge, and then the other indicia that you have to look at to make sure that it's valid is, does it have the right address? Is it current? Does it name what they're supposed to search? That's a judicial warrant. Now, an immigration warrant, on the other hand, you will see right there clearly, it says Department of Homeland Security. An immigration warrant does not allow them to come into your door. So if somebody knocks at your door and they say, well, let me in, I have a warrant, we should ask, do you have a warrant? And if they say yes, we should ask to see the warrant. Now it's important, do not open the door. Because if you open the door, they can use us as an excuse. Again, I told you earlier, any excuse that we give them, they can say, well, Maribel let me in, she opened the door for me. If I clearly don't open the door, I'm making it clear that I do not want them to come into my house. I can say, can you show me the warrant under the door? And then I can inspect the warrant to understand whether it is a valid warrant or not. So the immigration warrant, it says Department of Homeland Security. It says that it's signed by an immigration officer. It talks about removal or deportation. There you can see that that is not a warrant that allows them to come into your home or into a private space. So it's really important to know the difference between these two warrants. Now, I know many of you are here. Some of you might be impacted. Many of you are here because you want to support the immigrant community. And for that, I thank you. And so I want you to know what you can do if you witness a raid. If you witness a raid, again, the number one thing is remain calm, because you don't want to put yourself or people around you in danger. So remain calm. You can remind people that they have the right to remain silent. Remind them that they have the right to speak to a lawyer. And now this is important because if all of us who are witnessing a raid, if all of us remain silent, if all of us exercise our rights, that even gives us a lot more power than if we're all, if the people who have documentation speak, but the people who don't have documentation don't speak. So something to think about with the reminder, however, that if you have a green card or you have immigration documentation, like a visa, you have to show it if you're asked for it because that is the law. Now, uh, remember, if there's a raid and you have the officers who have shown a warrant, then what's important to note also is, are they following what the warrant allows them to do? Because even with a warrant, the warrant might allow them to search a specific place for a specific item, and they might go beyond that. So make sure that you look at what they're doing, make sure they're following that warrant, and if they're not, take notes. Make sure that and object to things that are going beyond the warrant. That's important. And as I mentioned earlier, recording is important. Now, one thing to note here also is that in some jurisdictions, you are not allowed to record sound unless you have the permission of the other person. In some jurisdiction, you just need one person permission. So if I'm recording and I allow it, then it's fine. But in some jurisdictions, you need two-person permission. So, but that's only for sound. For video, everybody has a right to record video. All right. Now, if we are arrested by the police, what do we do? And now this is important because we hope that this never happens. But one of the things that I tell everybody when I do this Know Your Rights is we have to be prepared. I have to tell you that I myself, as a person who's an immigrant, who has family who's mixed status, we have gone over our plan. We have practiced, we have talked about what will we do if, and this is really important. So if we're arrested by the police, again, remembering the right to remain silent is really important, and silent until we speak to a lawyer. The right to make a phone call is important. So you should know that you can make a phone call if you're arrested, but also know that if you're speaking to your lawyer, they cannot hear your conversation. But if you're speaking to anybody else, they will likely listen to your conversation. So be aware of that. Now, if you're arrested and you're criminally charged, then if you cannot afford an attorney, they will give you one. And if you're arrested and you can post a bond as soon as possible, that's the best thing to do. Why? Because you are more able to protect your rights and to fight for your freedom when you're outside than when you're incarcerated. Now, detention, immigration detention. Similarly as before, you have the right to consult with a lawyer, but again, emphasizing this is really important, that if you are brought in for immigration charges, then they will not provide you with an attorney. What you can do is you can ask for a list of free or low cost alternatives. As we think about preparing, one of the things that we can do is start thinking about where is it that we can find a lawyer? What are the lawyers in our communities? And I will share with you right now. The one is how to obtain a private immigration attorney. The American Immigration Lawyers Association has a list of lawyers that have been vetted by them. And so you can do that. And also for people who need a nonprofit attorney, here is a link to the National Immigration Legal Services Directory. I'm putting it in the chat. Both are in the chat. That's where you can go and see a vetted immigration attorney, right? Because we have to be careful that we go to people who know what they're doing. We have to be careful that we go to people who are qualified. And so going to the right places is important. So getting an attorney is important. Again, remember, even in immigration detention, you have the right to remain silent. You also have the right to local phone call. And in immigration detention, you have the right to notify your consulate. So just remember that. Now, if you're a bystander, if you're witnessing an individual arrest, what can you do? This is important. Document, document, document. That is really important because when we go to court later on, because we're arguing violations, we have to prove them. We have to have the evidence. So document, you can document by recording. If you don't have your phone with you, you can document by taking notes down. You can document by making sure that you know who the witnesses are that saw what happened and who might be able to testify if needed. So documenting what happened is really important. And I want you to know that you have the right to talk about and publicize truthful information you obtain lawfully. So if you see something that's happening and you have obtained that information lawfully, you can publicize that. And so you can publicize what the officers are doing, you can publicize where they're doing it. So just so you have that right. And you have the right to tell people about their legal rights, which is exactly what we're doing now. And so for those of you who are here because you want to be allies, the other slides where I mentioned the rights of immigrants, it's important for you to know because you can share that with people in your community who are impacted. You can let them know these are the rights that you have. Now let's go to the next one. As we know, as I mentioned earlier, even knowing our rights can be violated. We're seeing violations in many places. And I have to tell you, I work for the ACLU where part of what we do is litigate, right? We go to court when there are violations. So people are doing so. So if our rights are violated, as a litigator, they're going to need to know the facts. And so what is it that you need to make sure that you're writing down? Make sure you write down the officer's badge, the card numbers, the agency that they work for. So the details that are important for us to understand what happened. I mentioned earlier, get contact information for witnesses. If you've been injured or anybody has been injured, take photographs. And you can always file a written complaint with the agency that violated your rights. And of course, you can reach out to us at the ACLU and contact your affiliate. Now, in this moment, we also, in addition to our physical privacy and our physical rights, we also need to think about our electronic devices and how we protect our electronic privacy. And so this is something that, to be honest, is something that I become much more aware in this administration than ever, to be honest with you. And so I want to make sure that I'm sharing with you what I've learned. And when it comes to electronic devices, what you should know, if when we're in the United States, police officers cannot confiscate or demand to view your photographs or video without a warrant. They have to have a warrant, period, the end, for them to do so. And they cannot delete data under any circumstances. So that's the right, that's what they can do. Now, however, if we are entering the United States, then our rights there are different because in that case, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, what they allege that they have the right to confiscate any electronic device for no reason. And they say that they can not only take those devices, that they can also make a copy of information found in those electronic devices. So it's important for us to keep in mind, again, whether we're inside the United States or we're entering the United States. Inside the United States, they cannot confiscate our devices unless they have a warrant. As we're entering the United States, they allege that they have that right. So it's for us to keep in mind. So how can we protect ourselves? Well, if you travel, right? Because I mentioned that when you're traveling, that's when they are alleging they have much more power. Well, travel with as little data as possible, as few devices as possible. I can tell you that I now have my devices that I use in the United States, and then when I travel outside of the United States, all I need is a phone so I can make phone calls. So I take a simple phone. So I have a travel phone. So that's something that you can do. Another thing that you can do, I mentioned to you that they cannot make you open your phone. They cannot make you give them your password. But if for some reason they take your phone, they can't put your phone against your face if you use biometrics or your thumbprint to open it. They can do that. And so the best thing to do is to not use biometric functions anymore. I have moved away from that. I know I used to use face recognition because it's super simple and my phone opens that easily. But now that I know what I know, I'm no longer using biometrics, period. Now some people may choose to turn them on and off depending the circumstances. That's something you can do. But for me, I didn't want to be worrying about when and how. So I said, I will not use biometrics. That's something you can do. Now, another change that I've made, I actually did not understand the difference between text messaging, between WhatsApp, between Messenger, between Signal. I thought they were all the same. Turns out they're not all the same. Basically, they have different levels of protection. And also some of the various messaging services keep more information on others. So one of the strong protections that we can use is move away from texting, from WhatsApping, from messaging to something like Signal. It's encrypted end to end. They keep a lot less information about what we're doing. You can also make your messages disappear. So I know I have moved away from all the other messaging services and moved to Signal. And I know that that took also a lot with my family and my community when I'm like, we hadn't heard of Signal. That's not something that we were used to. I know that, being from Mexico, many of my community members use WhatsApp. And so I had to share with them, let's move to Signal. And so it's something that we can do right now as allies. It's something that you can share with your communities so that they can know that there are services that are more protected than others. And then, if you are moving around, if you don't want to be surveilled, etc., you can put your phone on airplane mode. Again, if you put your phone on airplane mode, of course, your phone calls won't come in. So you have to determine when that makes sense for you. But I'm just sharing with you the ways that you can protect your privacy. All right, we are going to test our knowledge, and I see a question like the one I saw that WhatsApp was. You thought that WhatsApp was end-to-end encrypted. WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted, but they keep a lot more information than Signal does. So even though they are end-to-end encrypted, Signal is still a more protective text messaging services. All right. Well, now I'm going to call in my actors and actresses. I know that's Kim and I know that's Hannah. So please come on over. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let us spotlight Kimberly and Hannah. And what we're going to do, this scenario that we're going to watch is an ICE officer coming to somebody's home. Now, you should know that in the scenario purposefully, we have asked Hannah, who's our tenant, Kimberly, who's our officer, to do certain things. Because what I want you to do is I want you to spot check what's happening. If you see something that should have been done differently, please put it in the chat. If you appreciate something that was done right, put it in the chat. Because it's our way for us to practice. Because I have to tell you that just like anything, practice makes perfect. I remember when I was a kid in Mexico, we used to have earthquake drills because you never knew when an earthquake was going to happen, right? It's similarly to what's happening right now. We never know when we're going to be in the situation. So it's best for us to practice now so that we can be ready and we can turn it on if in case we need it. So, Kimberly and Hannah, take it away.
Good afternoon. Can I help you?
Good afternoon. We are law enforcement and we are investigating a crime. May we step inside to ask you a few questions?
Do you mind if I ask what this is about?
We have a situation. It would be easier to explain if we could just speak with you somewhere other than out here on the street. And we thought it might be easier to speak with you at home rather than bring you in for questioning. If we can sit down for a moment, we can explain everything.
I would really rather speak here, or I can come outside if you'd like. I have two kids inside. I really don't want to upset them, especially since I don't know what this is about.
I understand. I have two little ones of my own. We'd like to show you some pictures of someone suspected of a crime to see if you know them and what you can tell us about them. Is there some place in the apartment where we can speak privately?
You can show me right here.
Oh, look, we do have a warrant that allows us to enter this address.
May I see the warrant?
Of course. Here you go.
All right, so I see the address list, my address listed here, and it is signed. Who is this signed by?
It's signed by my supervisor, who also happens to be the deputy director of the ICE field office. I can assure you it's official. And here's my badge.
Well, okay. You can come in, but please keep the noise down so that you don't wake the kids. My mom is upstairs putting them down right now.
So we're here because we're looking for Claudia Sanchez. We visited her home 3 times in the past month, trying to speak to her, but she hasn't been there. The last time we visited, a neighbor said we might find her here. Do you know Miss Sanchez? Is she here now?
No, it's actually just me and my partner and my two kids here right now.
Well, here are some photos of Miss Sanchez. Do you know this person?
I don't think I should say anymore.
Don't worry. As long as you are not Miss Sanchez, you're not in any trouble. How do you know Miss Sanchez?
I'm not her, but I don't want to speak with you. I have the right to remain silent.
Only to protect yourself, not to protect someone else. Why, why would you want to interfere with an investigation about a person wanted by law enforcement with a warrant out for them? Is Miss Sanchez a family member, a friend, or why would someone say we might find her here?
I'll just tell you one thing. Claudia Sanchez is one of the gentlest, most caring people I have ever met. She's been a godsend to this family. She cared for my mother for nearly 3 months when she was homebound recovering from a serious accident and helped her get back on her feet. She's the last person I could think of who would be wanted for a crime. This has to be a mistake. I refuse to say another word. Please leave.
So your mom employed Miss Sanchez as a caretaker? Did she know she lacked permission to live in the US, let alone work here? Now, we're going to need to speak with your mother to ask her some questions, and we'll also need to search the apartment just to make sure Miss Sanchez is not here and to see if there are any employment records to use in our investigation.
Whew, and scene. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Hannah. I was taking an eye at the chat and people were really on point. But let me first start. Hannah, how did it feel?
Yeah, I think it can be really scary, especially when people are caught off guard and there's all of a sudden an ICE agent there, and especially if they're not sure what to do in that situation.
Yep. And Kimberly, I think you were taking a specific approach to get the information that you wanted. Can you tell us what your approach was?
I wanted, when she said she had kids, I was like, yeah, I have kids too. I was trying to make a personal connection. I laughed at her when she pretended like she knew her rights and tried to make her feel silly. And then it escalated and I tried to be more threatening when she mentioned her mom. And I tried to trick her into letting me in the house.
Yep. So, Hannah, I know that we told you what to do. I know that you would have behaved differently. I know that for a fact. But from what you experienced, what do you think your character should have done differently?
Yeah, I think one, not opening the door, maybe talking through a window, something else, not admitting that I knew Claudia. Also early on, I mentioned that my mom was putting the kids down, and then later on I said, oh, it's just me and my partner and my kids. So my character had shared way too much information when it was not required of me at all. And also the judicial warrant.
Yeah, and one of the things that I saw in the chat, I mean, there was a lot of like, don't talk, don't open the door. Kimberly, can you tell me about this warrant that you had? What kind of warrant was it?
It was just an immigration warrant, which would not have given me permission to enter her house. Um, and I tried to trick her into letting her think it was signed and official, uh, even though it wasn't signed by a judge.
Yep. And then Hannah, when you started talking at the end, I don't know, do you really realize you talked about how Claudia took care of your mom, and then the officer is like, "Oh, great! So now she worked here undocumented. Now let me look for employment documentation." Like it really got, you can see how it gets out of control pretty quickly, which is why to the point of like slippery slope. Be careful, don't do it. Um, Another thing that Kimberly, you said, as long as you're not Miss Sanchez, you're not in trouble. And then you also try to like guilt trip Hannah. You're like, well, why would you stop? Why would you interfere with an investigation? So tell us a little bit more what was going through your head.
I was trying to scare her, really, um, and make her think, well, maybe if I don't, I'll get in trouble. I don't want to, I know, she might have thought that she could get in trouble for interfering with an investigation. So I really just wanted to try to trick her. And
All right, so I'm looking at time. So thank you. So you should know, I did see a comment that this was Oscar worthy. So thank you to our actresses, Hannah and Kimberly. All right, so going back to our presentation, let me again share my screen. Here we are. All right, so great job, everybody. I'm glad that we went through this. So a few things just to remind us from this role play. Do maintain a calm tone. Oh, that's one thing we should have said. Hannah did remain very calm. That's a great thing. She did ask for a warrant, and yet it was not a judicial warrant. Uh, our recommendation for Hannah is answer fewer questions, or just don't answer any questions. Just say, you can say, I'm exercising my right to remain silent. Now, if you do say anything, be truthful. Do not provide anything that is false. So that's really important. And if you're going to object, so if you object to them coming to your home or you object to them searching anything, say so out loud. So don't lose your control. Do not open the door. Never, ever, ever. No reason to do so. If they have a valid warrant, they're going to come in because that gives them the opportunity. So let them figure out, but you don't have to open the door. You don't need to feel like you need to answer every question. Again, don't lie, don't provide fake documentations, and don't consent to a search. So those are the key takeaways. So now, Hannah and Kimberly, by voice, I'm going to ask you to repeat after me, and everybody else who's at home right now, I want you to repeat after me too, because again, we're practicing. So I know we can't get everybody on voice and we can't have everybody here, but if we were in a room in person, I would ask everybody to do this. So after me, Kimberly and Hannah, please repeat. These are 5 key phrases. Number 1, am I free to go?
am I free
Way to
to go?
go.
Number 2, I wish to remain silent.
I
I
wish to
wish
remain silent.
Number 3, I do not consent to this search.
I
I
do
do
not
not
consent
consent to
to
this
this
search.
Number 4, am I under arrest?
Am I under arrest?
arrest.
And number 5, I want to speak to a lawyer.
I
I
want to speak with a lawyer.
Thank you so much. All right, so now we're gonna go to Q&A because I promised we were gonna have time for Q&A. So Kimberly, please let me know, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so we can see each other. Let me know what questions have come that we should talk about.
So many questions. I wrote them down. So, one of the most frequently asked questions is, can ICE agents be followed in a vehicle and observed from a distance? And a connected question, is a vehicle considered a private space?
That's a really good question because we're seeing a lot of activity happening regarding to vehicles, especially I'm in the Bronx right now, so it's a different situation, but in many places of the United States, we see that happening. So 2 things. Yes, you can again, if you're in a public space and you are lawfully in this public space, you can do whatever you want. You can record, you can follow, you can do whatever you want. But I think this is what's really key: obstruction and interference, right? I mentioned this before. And so what we're hearing, if you look at the news, what we're hearing is, well, this person, the accusations are this person bumped into a federal vehicle, or this person was obstructing our path. And so just being very well aware. So this is where knowing your right is important, because then you can decide how you're going to act. And so you can decide that maybe you're going to be far away, or maybe you're going to be a pedestrian as opposed to following them, etc. So something to think about. And when it comes to cars, we did not include information in the slide, but this is what's important. So a car is a little different because, as we know, just regular drivers, right? When we're driving, if we get pulled over, we have the requirement to pull over. And then at that moment, we have the requirement, if they ask us for our license, our insurance, and our registration, we have the requirement to give them that information. And in those moments, again, going back to what I mentioned before in terms of interactions with law enforcement, the escalating and being safe is the best way to go. To do so, the best thing to do at that moment is to follow orders, because otherwise things can just escalate even more. Um, Having said that, remember that even in a car, you have the right to remain silent. In a car, you also have the right to not consent to a search. If they have a valid reason to search your car, they will do so. But if they're asking you, may I search your car, you can definitely say no, and so that you make sure that you're stating that. So when we talk about private versus public spaces, it differs. Again, your home being like the most protective area where we have a lot of expectation of privacy, and then it depends on different areas. And in this case, like I mentioned, in a car, it's different because that's regulated.
Uh, ICE is not always following the law. What do we do if they are breaking the law? And is there anything we can do or any legal ways to stop an illegal stop and detention?
So yes, we are seeing violations by ICE and by other agencies. And that reminds me, I did see a question in the chat whether ICE is part of the military. They're not. It's Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It's another agency. But when we see ICE or any federal agency violating our rights, again, the best thing to do is just document. You can object by voice, but again, thinking about your safety, thinking about the escalation, thinking about right now, again, what I'm seeing is a lot of uses of obstruction and interference. So they might tell you, step away, you're obstructing. And so in that case, it's best to step away, to even record yourself saying, I'm stepping away, I'm not obstructing, so that's clear there. That's the best thing to do. One thing that I also want to say, when we see law enforcement violating the rights of others, somebody who's vulnerable, if you're recording, record the actions of the official and not of the person whose rights are being violated, right? So it's best to not record their face, not record anything that identifies them, because that could make them even more vulnerable. So focus on the actions of the officers. That's really, really important. And then after you have that information, the best thing is, really, really the best thing is to contact the person, a loved one for the person whose rights were violated, because then they can decide whether, if they have an attorney, whether they want to give that information to the attorney, and the attorney can decide when it makes sense to make that information available. They can decide whether they want to take it to the media. But, using that information is something that should be done strategically. You have to think about when it makes more sense and when is it more impactful. And so often us as bystanders, we don't know that, right? We just have the footage. So have it and give it to somebody who can make those decisions for that loved one.
Let me stop and say, folks in the audience, is there any objection if we go 5 minutes over? And Maribel, would that be okay with you? I've got more questions. If you have major objections, give me a thumbs down in the chat, and then everybody's going to throw tomatoes at you. So, um, so you mentioned violence. One of the questions that we have that I wanted to ask is, what do we do? And I think I know the answer, but I'd like you to address it. What do we do? And I can't believe I have to ask this question. What do we do if and when we see someone being physically abused by ICE officers?
Yes, so this is one of the most difficult situations because our instinct is to try to protect that person, right? Our instinct is to get involved. And, I'm seeing it, you see loved ones, parents, daughters, children being, so that is our instinct. And I appreciate and I understand that. Now, I'm here to let you know about your rights and to let you know what the consequences could be. So if you interfere for whatever reason, you could then be charged with interference. You could then be charged with obstruction. And then, of course, there could be a case and they could share, well, this was happening, and it could be an argument in the court. But in the meantime, you could be taken and arrested. You could be put in peril. So again, because our utmost importance is for your safety and for de-escalating, what we recommend is documenting. That's the best way to go. Because if you start getting interfering, then you're going to have consequences that are going to be against you, in addition to whoever is being, whose rights are being violated.
I'm going to take a facilitator's privilege and ask you a question that's not on the list. People are being disappeared, we know this, and sometimes they're disappeared and their families don't even know. I have seen uh, strategies, and I'd like you to share them, where people try to get the information of the people that are being disappeared or kidnapped, uh,
Mhm.
so that they can try to get that information to their loved one, so that they're just not disappeared and in Liberia or something and nobody knows. Can you give us some advice on how to handle those situations and if those are in fact, uh, what we see happening on TikTok or whatever, is that a good strategy or does it put people in danger?
Yes, so I'm gonna do, and I just realized that the other links that I was putting in the chat didn't go to the audience, they went to hosts and panelists. So I'm gonna put all my links in the chat right now. Oh no, that's too much. But well, let me start with, I wanna put links to a family preparedness plan. And this is
We'll
part
email, we'll email
of,
all of them.
perfect. So we'll use email, that's better, because it'll get messy. So number one thing I want to say is even before we get to the disappearance, this is where I think it's important for us, for our loved ones, for our communities to start talking about a plan. It's hard. It's really hard. I've done it with my family. And we don't want to talk about it because we don't want to even think about having that situation, but it can happen. So, what does the family preparedness plan do? You identify an emergency contact. You figure out where your important documents are so that they can get them. You think about, well, do we have an attorney? Some people have attorneys. Can we contact the attorney? If not, who in our community can we reach out to if needed? One of the things that I have to tell you, I used to work, as mentioned, for a member of Congress. Members of Congress can be very helpful. And many people don't know that. Many people don't know that you can go to constituent services, give them a call, say, I need help. So do that. Now, to your question, Kimberly, of in the moment you're seeing something is happening and you don't want that person to be disappeared and you want their loved ones to know what happened. I would say the easiest thing to do is just say, what's the phone number of your loved one? Take that phone number down. Because then that's all you need. Because then you can call that person and say, I saw somebody who was wearing a black shirt, who was wearing a chain, who was wearing glasses. They gave me this phone number, and I want you to know that this is what I saw, right? And so that way, that person does not have to give you their name because again, if they say their name, that could be used against them. If they say anything about them, that could be used against them. So this is a way to both be able to contact the loved one and also protecting the person who's being detained or arrested.
Thank you so much. So heartbreaking. I have one more question, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So many people have reached out to us, and they're doing mutual aid programs and community-based programs where they want to create Ice Watch for their communities. Are there any resources that that you can just tell us about, and then we will share in the follow-up email that teach people how to create Ice Watch in their neighborhoods?
So yes, one of the resources that we will share, again, Indivisible and many other organizations, along with the ACLU, we put together the No Kings rallies, we organize them, and for that demonstration, we put together resources. Some of them are exactly about community organizing. How do we prepare? So we have information there that you can access. That's number one. And then number two, I want you to know, again, just re-emphasize that telling people about their rights is something that is legal. And also publicizing anything that you see in plain view is something that is legal and is constitutionally protected. So you can do so. So feel free that as you're doing this effort, that is constitutionally protected. But yes, we will give those resources.
And one more question. What is a whistle kit and what is the best way to distribute them?
A whistle kit, I don't know.
Okay, well, someone wanted to know, so I thought I'd ask. Someone knows something. uh, We learned something. I'll have to Google that. Maribel, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for this helpful yet heartbreaking presentation, quite frankly. Y'all give her some Maribel some love in the chat. I hope you can see all those hearts. We um, just want to make sure that we know how to stand up in allyship for our immigrant community members in this moment. And if things go the way they went last night, then very soon we will be talking about pathways to citizenship and about how we can welcome people into our country and not how we can drive them out. So thank you so much for being with us.
Kimberly, if I may, this will be my last words, but I want you all to know that my father died undocumented. He died driving down from Virginia down to Texas. He died in South Carolina, and nobody called us to let us know that he had died and was in a car accident. There were plenty of people involved, plenty. You know, the officers, the ambulance, the morgue, all of this. And so just want you to know that I know what it feels to be alone and feel like nobody cares. But I also know that if that one person, and one person eventually, we called my dad's phone number, and the owner of the junkyard where the car had been taken answered the phone and let us know what happened. So that one person allowed us to bring closure to what had happened, right? I want you to know that your actions, they might not feel like a lot because we're dealing with a lot right now, but your actions make a huge difference. That person who answered the phone and told us what had happened made a huge difference in our lives. So again, just want to thank you for being here. Thank you for caring, and want you to know that your actions do make a difference. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, y'all. We have so much work to do, and we are just so lucky to have had you join us this evening. Thank you again, Maribel, for joining us. So, y'all, I feel like I learned so much, and I feel just a little bit better prepared to stand in solidarity and know what to do and how to do it if I ever am involved or witness a police interaction. We're gonna put the script, the slides up 1 second. We just want to tell you about the new session that we've added. But I also want to tell you about our December session. We are dealing with trauma right now. Those of us, it is a trauma, a type of trauma. When we live constantly on guard with everything that we're seeing in this administration, we have a very special session for you in December called Resilience for Sustainable Activism. It is how we help ourselves build the resilience that it takes to get through these times and these moments of trauma so that we can be resilient and continue to fight. Please register for this call. This is not going to be one that you want to miss. This one is for you. So it is Thursday, December 4th at 7, from 7 to 8:30 with Lumos Transforms. And I personally have taken a class with Lumos and in Kim in Defo, and you do not want to miss this. It will help you gain the tools to be resilient in this moment. And we'll go to the very last slide. We also want to tell you about another session that we have added. You have asked for Saturday sessions. And so this one is Organizing with Care with our partners, Solidarity Organizing Initiative. And it again is about how to stand in solidarity with our immigrant community members. This is not a call that you're going to want to miss either. So we're dropping the registrations for both of those calls in the chat, and we will make sure that we include those in the follow-up session. But very important, we want to know how we can make these calls and our programming better. So if you would indulge us for just a moment and answer the questions that are showing up on your chat. There are two questions. and one that is like a Likert scale, and then one question if you have any other information that you would like to share with us about how we can serve you better with our programming and our training series. So thank you so much for being here. Um, and thank you for your time. And thank you for your heart and your work and everything that you are doing to make this place a better place. That was a song, and I didn't intend to do that. Thank you. We're going to keep the survey open just for a bit so that you all respond, and we will see you on the 15th for Organizing with Care and in December for Resilience for Sustainable Activism. Have a good night, you all. We're going to leave the survey up just for a little while longer. And we're at 100% participation. Thank you all so much for being here. Y'all have a wonderful, yeah, the rest of the evening. Good night.